Roger Martin here from Billings, Montana. This is Dr. Janda, and this is some more of the declassification stuff that's coming out. Let me get to this other control here.
The lies and uncovering the truth, end quote. She has incredible courage. It's my honor to welcome back to our platform Tracy Beans. Tracy, welcome back to Operation Freedom.
Hey, it's so good to be here. I love coming on Sundays with you. It's so wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Well, I love, and our listeners love having you aboard, Tracy. And Tracy, about a year ago, actually, I'll put a date on it, January 12th, 2018, I presented to folks on my platform that the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, Michael Horowitz, had handed over some information. This was confirmed, actually, by Chad Pergram from Fox News, had handed over information as it relates to the fake Russian hoax scandal and the Department of Justice's involvement, FBI's involvement, to Congress. And it just so happens that a couple days later, Devin Nunes came out, and that's when he started pushing out the his memos that got everybody in the globalist syndicate all wired up. Many people have chastised me, saying, well, not much came of that, although I disagree with them. If you look at the number of FBI and Department of Justice officials that have either been fired, terminated, resigned, reassigned, under investigation. But they feel as though he is a player for the deep state. In fact, I completely disagree with them. This week...
Now let's look at a little clearer picture here.
He knows that the media is more than fake. He knows it's more than propaganda. But this thing with them coming out and saying that Trump's State of the Union address was 76 approval rating is mind-blowing, because they would have never said that before. You got to understand that Trump is getting at some of these mainstream media groups and the elite people that are pushing their crap legally through military, or through subpoenas, through sealed indictments, and through the military tribunals.
That's a little better picture. Now let's go back to the other section here.
Presented some information that I believe the fake media, I don't know of anybody in the fake media has touched, and it relates to Michael Horowitz and the Office of the Inspector General of the Department of Justice and an investigative summary.
Yes. And it was one of those stories where you start getting chills as you're putting the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
He released this investigative summary that he did as it looks like he's doing the FISA investigation that's still to be released, that report. And sometimes you have an offshoot. You find something else criminal or some other malfeasance, and you have to do a kind of side investigation on that and do your own report on that. And instead of releasing that whole report like he did in the Andrew McCabe case, he released a summary with very confusing and vague details. But if you start to dig there, you find that they're basically, there are three very high-ranking FBI officials, one retired, two still current, who were working with a subcontractor. And the subcontractor is they found that the subcontractor violated all kinds of rules and performed what are known as inherent governmental functions. So if you look up what those are in the manual of the Federal Acquisitions Regulations, you'll see that one of them is counterintelligence or intelligence operations. And kind of like piecing things back together, knowing what we know about the abuse of the 702 queries and the fact that Horowitz is looking into FISA abuse, we can see that it's likely, and I'm really going to stake myself on this one. I think this contractor they're admonishing is Fusion GPS.
I agree. After reviewing your dissection, Tracy, I think you uncovered it.
Let's wrap our head around this. He's talking about GPS in this report, this major report that's come out. There's somebody that's confusing, and they think this is GPS. This is big stuff, and no one is talking about it. Remember, the major stream media, what we don't hear is what needs to be talked about. Always.
I'm really certain, and the reason that really nailed it home for me, Dave, is the last admonishment in there about conflict of interest violations. And we know that Fusion GPS had hired Nellie Orr to dig into Donald Trump's children and all kinds of other things. And we know that Nellie Orr is married to Bruce Orr, who then funnels that information back into the FBI after, she was done with it. So given the personal conflict of interest line, putting all those pieces together, and I think that Michael Horowitz is really uncovering some crazy, crazy stuff. And we know that there was abuse of the system by contractors, specifically FBI contractors. We learned all that a year, in 2017. So I think it's big. I really do. I'm a little bit blown away by it, to be honest.
Well, let me read what you wrote for your conclusion. Quote, what this means in terms of our country is even more destructive than previously imagined. A government contractor, Fusion GPS, being paid concurrently by our government and the campaign of an opposing political candidate, Hillary Clinton, utilized the most sensitive information available, the FISA information, about U.S. persons and created a false narrative, fake Russian hack, fake Russian dossier, to either prevent or, in the case he was elected, unseat and render ineffective the President of the United States. Michael Horowitz seems to be getting to the bottom of this, end quote.
Yeah. Yep.
Tracy, this is sedition.
It is. It's horrible. It's horrifying.
We need to understand that this Michael Horowitz is not a deep state in person. I've got to do some more study on Michael Horowitz, but if he's getting to this information, good. It needs to be brought out. The sooner the better.
You think it can't get worse, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And the only thing is that, that gives me some solace is, yes, this was referred back to the FBI for action. But the fact that it's being written about, and this will come out. It's not a case of this isn't going to see the light of day. I mean, the investigative summary is released. He's probably holding back the report because it'll either come out in tandem with the FISA report or there's criminal investigations going on, and so he's holding it back for that.
You mentioned 3 FBI officials.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about who you think they are?
Yeah, we can. And, the biggest point here, I think, too, is that it doesn't really matter. It matters at the end of the day when everything's said and done, but for the crux of the story, it doesn't matter because, whoever they were, it happened anyway.
It's the process, that was criminal.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, digging in a little bit, there's some contention over whether McCabe was fired or he retired. We're still kind of in the middle on that. And then I was thinking maybe it's Baker. And then I was thinking definitely probably pre-staff, believe it or not, and people don't agree with me on that. And I think it's Dana Bonte as well.
Tracy, many people have stated that my support of Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, is misplaced. That's being kind. That he, in fact, is part of the problem and not part of the solution. What's your take?
I don't agree with that at all. And people cite that he's an SES employee. I have news for you guys. Almost everybody is an SES employee.
Really. For our listeners, SES, define that.
Yeah, Senior Executive Service. It's like a group of protection. It's basically, to sum it up, it's protection. So you basically can't be fired. It's very complicated, but it's a protection, and a lot of swamp rats have this protection. It's sort of like its own government in a way. Is that good for a short explanation?
I think that's perfect. But here's the interesting, Tracy, again, tell me if I'm wrong, but since he brought that information to Congress January 12th of 2018, a tremendous amount has happened.
Yes. Yes, and don't discount the fact that I did a whole piece on the fact that Horowitz was handcuffed by Obama and went to Congress to fight against Obama and what he was doing to the Office of Inspector General and Department of Justice, specifically with Fast and Furious. Basically they changed the rules so that Eric Holder would have to okay document releases to the Office of Inspector General, which completely defeats the purpose of having an Office of Inspector General. So he fought against that for years and finally got protections placed so that would be reversed. And, people cite also the mid-year exam report that he did saying, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. And that report was damning.
It was.
Damning. People read the conclusion page, Dave, and they said, this is bull. I'm like, wow, read the report, guys. It is damning.
Right, and there are reports, actually, that his conclusions were actually modified by other players. The conclusion section, because, as you mentioned, when you read the report, it's damaging. It's damaging to the swamp rats.
Absolutely, it is. And, there are some arguments with him that are valid. We're learning a little bit more now about some of the things that seem to have been omitted that should have been in there, and asked me to recall specifically what that is. I think it has something to do with his referral to the intelligence community, OIG, about the metadata that Clinton's emails were viewed by foreign actors. But overall, I have to tell you that he seems to be doing what he's supposed to, especially given this report. If this summary report didn't come out, I would be like, all right, what's he doing? It's taken a really long time for this one to come out. But this summary report, if it is what we think it is, whoa, this FISA report is going to be insane.
Well, I believe it was at his congressional hearing where it came out, and I think not Mark Meadows, but I'm blanking on his name, from Jim Jordan from Ohio, was pushing him on that, who else was viewing Hillary's emails, and somehow they got on the track of China.
Yes, not surprising.
And that was under Horowitz's testimony.
Yeah, you're right. I actually forgot about that. You're absolutely right. Yes. And that's not surprising at all. And, no coincidence we're seeing the prosecution of Huawei, which is another piece I recently did as well. Mm-hmm. So, I wouldn't, none of us, I don't think this was an accident. I don't think you do either, that China was being given these secrets. We have Feinstein, who's been wrapped up in this for goodness knows how long, McAuliffe, so many of them.
We're going to end this here. I don't want to drag it on too long, but I've got to look up Michael Horowitz and see what else he's doing. Obviously, some of the insiders that are digging and researching on this think that this FISA report is going to be super damaging, and that some of this evidence that he's done, Michael Horowitz has done on GPS, is going to be super damaging. It's big, big stuff, maybe even worse than we know and understand. Again, this is Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. Get on Dr. Janda's program, only $9 a month. You'll get stuff that you'll get nowhere else. This is why he gets 30, 40,000 views. He's even had as much as 200,000 views on some of the stuff that he's brought out. Really amazing guy and amazing group of people that work with him and bring this stuff out. Good day.